We visited Vietnam earlier this year and made quite a few mistakes.
My bank card was stolen, we had cockroaches in our hotel, and all of my trousers were destroyed just 3 days into the trip.
But we also found out about a way to visit Ha Long Bay for a fraction of the cost, and we designed the perfect 10-day itinerary.
So in this video, we are gonna share with you how you can plan your perfect itinerary for Vietnam.
And we will share all the learnings with you so you don't make the same mistakes as us.
Before we tell you all the mistakes that we made, we're gonna share with you how you can plan your perfect itinerary since we've done it a couple times now.
The first thing you'll have to do is to make a list of every place you want to visit in Vietnam. As you know, Vietnam is a huge country, there are so many places to see, but you will have to define which ones to choose. And these in the screen are some of the most famous ones. That includes Hanoi, Ho Chi Minh City, Hoi An, Da Nang, Ha Long Bay, and more. We've made a perfect 10-day itinerary for Vietnam, but if you have more time, well, there's more places to explore.
To narrow it down, make sure to research how long you're gonna need in each of the places and how to get there, because sometimes it takes too long for the amount of time that you're gonna have in that place, so maybe you want to scrap certain places.
Check the weather in each destination you're going to. We spent quite a lot of time in Vietnam, but we never made it to Hoi An or Da Nang, and that's because it was rainy season there and we didn't want to be trapped because it floods quite a bit and buses don't come in and out.
Vietnam is a tropical country and the country stretches quite long, so the weather can be different in the different areas and you'll want to adjust your trip based on that.
When you go into Vietnam, you'll most likely arrive by plane, and there are 3 main international airports in the country: Hanoi, the Ho Chi Minh one, and the one in Da Nang.
Knowing where the airports are will also help you plan your trip, because if you don't want to spend too long in buses or you don't want to spend the night in buses, then you'll most likely be flying between these 3 points in Vietnam. And what you can do is, for example, go to Hanoi first and then move around to the different areas in Hanoi, then fly to Da Nang, go to the areas outside of Da Nang, and finish your trip in Ho Chi Minh City.
And lastly, really think about the trip that you want to do. If you want to go to the beach, you'll most likely have to go to the south of Vietnam. If you want to explore Ha Long Bay and spend quite a few days looking at the amazing formations of rocks in the water, then you might want to spend more time there. If you want to see greenery, maybe Sapa, maybe Ninh Binh are best places to go to. But you have to mold your trip based on what you want to make out of it.
Not only in regards to the activities, but also in regards to how are you gonna get there and what is the vibe of the place. I say this because, for example, everybody wants to go and see Sapa because it's a really famous place. But a lot of people spend the whole day on the bus only to get there and do the most touristy activities in the most crowded places ever. Is it really worth it? That depends on what you're looking for your trip.
But now let's get into the mistakes we made that you have to avoid.
The first mistake we want you to avoid is paying thousands of dollars for a luxury cruise to see Ha Long Bay when you can just do it for $35.
You heard that right. We actually made a whole video about how we went to Cat Ba instead of Ha Long to see the beautiful landscapes of Lan Ha Bay and Ha Long Bay.
The trick is to travel to Cat Ba Island, spend 2 nights there and do a 1-day tour around Lan Ha Bay. We paid $35 per person for this tour. In high season, it might be $50, but you're still saving a lot of money in comparison to doing the luxury cruise around Ha Long Bay.
Because most people just end up going to Ha Long because they think of Ha Long Bay, but the bays are actually connected by water.
If you want to learn more about this, go check out our video that we made. I actually also did a luxury cruise, so you can also go check it out and compare for yourself to see what is better for you.
The second mistake we made that you should avoid is staying outside the old quarter in Hanoi. Now, you will most likely go to Hanoi. It's the most beautiful place in the whole in Vietnam, in my humble opinion. But if you stay in the outskirts, well, you're gonna struggle when it comes to exploring the center, but also when it's time to leave, because we had to carry our suitcases from where we were. It was actually backpacks, but still very heavy. from where we were all the way to the center because all of the transfers will leave from the center. Another mistake we made was staying in Ho Chi Minh City for too long. I glamorized the city so much that I convinced Albert to stay like 4 days there, but in reality it's completely unnecessary. You need 1 day to see the city, another day to see the tours outside of the city, which is the Kochi tunnels and maybe a few more if you're interested. And then it's time to go. There's not that much more to see. It is still very nice to get to know about the history of the country, but too long is too long.
That takes us to our next mistake, which we also did in Ho Chi Minh City, and that was not being so careful with where we were staying at. Unfortunately, our place had cockroaches. You will see when you go that there's a lot of them in the city, everywhere. So it wasn't a problem of our place, it's just that they are everywhere. If you stay in a big hotel, in a room high up, you won't see them most likely, right? But if you stay in a not so popular Airbnb, you might have a trouble with this if you don't like insects. Another mistake you don't want to do is not watching what you eat, because a lot of tourists go to Vietnam and get sick, and you don't want that to ruin your trip. So I would recommend that you avoid eating seafood, that you watch the street food places where you eat, and that you're always drinking bottled water, including to brush your teeth.
Another mistake to avoid is not having enough cash. I was surprised with how many places didn't take card. Even in some hotels, we had to pay full-on cash. And if we didn't have enough with us, well, we'd be in a bit of trouble. So make sure to, when you get there, or before you travel, get a bit of cash, because it will be useful no matter where you go.
What we did is when we arrived in the big cities, so in Hanoi and in Ho Chi Minh, we took cash out for, you know, the next batch of days. So that can help you if you do the same. Speaking of money, while we were in Vietnam, my bank card was compromised. I don't know what I purchased.
It was maybe one of the cafes, or maybe one of the street food stalls, or even a tour that we booked. We don't know. But the main point is that when you're traveling to a country like Vietnam, you can be somewhat confident that at some point your card will get compromised and you will be charged by things that you didn't really purchase.
Luckily, I had notifications enabled on my phone and I saw it right away, and they were only able to take $1, and I blocked the card, and then I could see that they were trying to purchase many other things. But the biggest problem was that I was left with no card while we were on the rest of the trip. Luckily, I was with Naz and he had his card, so we could do that. But if you're traveling alone or your family is depending on your bank card, make sure to have a backup one and to always have notifications enabled, because otherwise they would have stolen a lot of money from me.
Make sure to have a language translator on your phone. It can be Google Translate or something else. We found that even in hotels, in some hotels, they didn't really speak English. And this is very common, especially if you go a bit rural in Vietnam. A lot of people don't speak English, and I think that's completely normal. Just make sure you're prepared for it, because sometimes you need something that's relatively important, and you want to make sure you have a way to communicate with who you're talking to.
But now I want to tell you guys about my choices of clothes and how that impacted my trip. We've already mentioned that Vietnam is a tropical country, and it does get rain quite a lot, depending on the time of the year that you go. But the second time that I went there with my mom, it was raining like every day. And I had long trousers, but the problem is my trousers were below my ankle, and when we were walking, even in the city, it was muddy everywhere. So by the end of the day, my trousers were full of mud and they had to go. Like, I had to wash them by hand at the hotel. After that, I bought like those trousers that like hook at your ankle. I look like a nerd, but at least I could wear them more than one day. So think about that when you go, and make sure obviously your shoes are also waterproof, because otherwise they'll...
And the last mistake that we recommend you to avoid is not having a SIM card. So in our case, we decided to get an eSIM, and that's because we realized that to get a taxi, to order food, anywhere you go, you will need to have access to the internet.
It's also very useful for knowing like the way to the next place that you want to see. So it's very handy. Just make sure to have it, because if you're ever in a place where you need to get a taxi, this will be the easiest way. Hope this was useful, guys. That's all the mistakes that we made, and hopefully it helps you plan your trip to Vietnam. We have a whole bunch of other videos that we made about our trip, so make sure to check them out to help you with your planning.
If you like this video, give it a like, comment, subscribe, do your whole thing. And we have a lot more exciting videos coming up on this channel, so make sure to stay around.
Thank you guys so much for watching, and I guess we'll see you in our next video.
Was that good? Stay around.
Yeah, no, it wasn't great.